Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another One-Up webinar. It's been a while since we've done one of these now, and today I'm joined by two dashing gentlemen, as I described them. I think Kyle took the compliment very, very well. It's Nick Beecroft from Access and Kyle from Ringover. Guys, how are we doing today? Nick, I'll start with you.
I'm all right. I did have some technical issues, as we both know.
And I played tech
And
support. That's the best part.
Derry, a man of the people, never too big to get involved. It helped me through it. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just struggling with my voice. So if I'm making no sense, I'll just shut up and stop talking. But I'm sure we'll be grand.
I'm sure some people hear the accent, mate, and think you're making nonsense sounds all the time anyway. I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Kyle, how are you doing
I
today?
am top of the world, thank you, Derry. Very happy to be a part and join two fine gentlemen around this very awesome topic.
That's very kind of you to say, mate. I say I've kind of done this bit back to front here as well. We'll do for those who don't know as well. Like I mentioned, Nick from Access as well. But Nick, do you want to tell us a little bit about Access for those who don't know what you guys do? As a quick intro, and then we'll jump into things.
Yeah, cool. So Access started on a kind of a new journey a few years ago of acquisition in our division. Very strategic M&A, and the whole plan around it is that we believe we have now got a full front, middle, back office solution with sort of two key partners um, in the room that allow any recruiter who wants to just take more of their billings and start getting more of their billings as their own agency, and then scale that into one of the largest agencies in the world. It doesn't matter who you are. We have a solution and an offering that allows you to have one point of contact, one point of failure, one invoice, one support team, and deliver every bit of tech you'll ever need for you to scale your organisation and recruitment.
It's fair to say you've seen and spoke to a hell of a lot of recruiters over your time at Access so far, and of course your days prior to that at other companies too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I've been in this for nearly 10 years now. So, spoken to a lot of people. I am what I like to describe as obnoxiously on your LinkedIn timeline over the last decade. So, yeah, I made a lot of friends.
And I would agree with that assessment as well. Kyle, how about yourself as well? Talk to us about Ringover and your guys' exposure to the industry too.
Yeah, well, Ringover, we're a communications platform. Started off as a business phone solution, and we've just evolved from we're the SaaS publishers as well as the carriers. The recruitment space we felt was quite an untapped market. Not such a wide selection in terms of availability and carriers and providers, and we dived head in, just opening up the levels of communication, moving away from just your standard phone calls, given the availability for texting, for WhatsApp, omni-channel for those that operate on a social media platform, having it all in a single interface, and then of course having it integrate back into the CRMs, just trying to make life easier, more efficient for the recruiters and of course the consultancies themselves.
And a similar story, every recruiter needs to recruit a conversation platform of some kind,
Absolutely.
right? Normally a VoIP. So again, spot on to have the right guy in the room. Love it. Awesome. Well, just to kind of like summarize what the goal of today is as well, what we're looking to try and do today is get a few things out of this. We're going to share a few benchmarks with you and to help you see how you stack up against other agencies like yours throughout the market. How are they doing? How do you stack up against them so you can give yourself some comparison internally and look at maybe where there are some improvements or changes to come. As mentioned, we've got a lot of experience in the room, thousands of recruiters that we've spoken to over the years as well, some stories and insights that we can share off the back of what we're seeing here today. And then also come up with some ideas on what we're currently seeing being the hot topics in the market today. We know that AI, for example, is always right up there. We'll try not to go down that rabbit hole of getting stuck down it, but no doubt there'll be that conversation point around what others are looking at and what they're trying to use to make sure some of these metrics improve in the right direction. A more strict sort of agenda for you as to what I went through a second ago, benchmarks to get things off, a little bit around strategies for success, and then we'll go into some Q&A at the end. Sound good to you guys?
Sounds great.
Smash him. First and foremost, if you are watching, then you can join in here and ask a few questions as well. We use a website called Slido. If you go on there and enter in the code or get your mobile phone out and take a picture of that QR code on the right-hand side of your screen, you can start firing in some questions. And in a minute, I'll put a little prompt up on screen for you to start firing those in, and we'll start answering them out towards the end as well. 3 more seconds on this, and then I'll jump on. 3, 2, and 1, and it's gone. Question I'm going to ask you on this one is, what are you hoping to learn about or take from this session today? We've mentioned we're going to go through some benchmarks, but it's more than just that. We could sit here and share some numbers and some charts with you guys, spin out some stories that we've seen in the market as well, but more importantly, it'd be really good to see what it is that you as the audience want to see coming from this session. Because there'll be always things that you come onto this expecting to get and maybe you don't quite hear about, and we'd like to make sure that you at least get something coming off the back of that as well. I guess for you guys on your side, if you were coming into today and you know what the market's like today, for those that you've spoken to as well, Nick, I'll come to you on this one. What would you want to be learning or hearing from sessions like these?
So, I think I was actually just going to put in Slido there just to get us kicked off, but I think what history is usually the best predictor of the future, right? So I think what I would be hoping to come off the back of is an understanding of what we are likely to expect as we move forward into the next sort of 12, 18, 24 months, which is going to be a totally different world than what we've probably seen over the last couple of years. And would probably want to understand where I want to invest my time and my resource as a recruitment business owner, and really be set up for success for when the time comes that the market starts really booming again.
And are you expecting the market to boom? Is a kind of curious question to head things up, because it's that ever-present question of when does the market, air quotes, come back?
I think we've had a couple of false starts, right? And I think we've all kind of been excited a couple of times, and then we've seen it kind of drop off, not pick up as fast. But off the back of the big sort of main events of the year, like the Recruitment Agency Expo and the conversations that we're having, I would like to think there's a lot more confidence from my side that we are starting to see the market really start to flow again. And I think we're not a million miles away from that. I think we're going to have a rough few months, and then I think we'll really start to pick up as the year goes on.
Always good news. And Carl, what about on your side as well?
I must agree much of the same. I think with the sort of clients that we've been speaking with, it was that pattern. The mid to the end of last year, there was a bit of a dip off. I think a concern for the business owners, for the agencies out there. But the start of 2025 has just seemed to be exceptionally positive for individuals, for the consultants themselves. It just looks like there is a definite peak in what's taking place. I can say that confidently, at least with the recruiters that we've been working with closely.
Perfect. I mean, it's pretty spot on to us, and I sound like I'm just kind of like saying, yeah, what those guys said. But I think for us, like we all know, the 23, 24 was a bit of a sucky couple of years. At least now the conversations we've had throughout Q1, a lot of people are less in kind of like firefighting, disaster, panic mode, and it's much more about, okay, now we've started to see a stable base starting to come into place. What does that future look like? What should we be thinking about for the future here? Like, what should we be expecting of our teams? What tech should we be checking out? There's all these conversations starting to come around, which is far better than questions around how do we survive, which are always horrible questions to have to face and, of course, talk about. It sounds like it's going into a better place. We'll leave this here. I've taken down all these little notes here as well, so thank you guys for submitting all those through. We'll come into those in turn as well. First and foremost, where I want to jump into those, taking a look at some of these benchmarks, guys. So what we've done here is we've got a breakdown of different agency sizes where we've got micro agencies, we've got small agencies, we've then got medium size and large, medium being 50 to 100, and then large being anything that's 100 plus. And across these, we're going to see some trends, and we'll talk about them as we go. It does look back at all of 2024's data. What I'll do here is sit on this one for a few seconds, then look at the other one, then we can have a conversation about it. The key thing that I noted looking at this, and I've heard this being a real big conversation point over the last, probably last 6 months or so, is that contract is now the hot in thing that everyone's talking about. It's always been present in the market, but more and more companies are saying we need to be doing more and more of that recruitment size. And a few of the clients I've spoken to that are in the sort of 40 to 60 range, they've been saying, 3 years ago, we had maybe 10% of our business was contract. Now we're up to about 33%. They're really starting to increase and make this part of their book. Nick, as a CRM provider, I'm sure you guys see this a lot through Vincherry. Of course, you do other things as well. But are you seeing this as a bit of a trend in the market where lots of businesses are trying to move towards doing more contract recruitment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it became a very prevalent conversation probably around COVID times when it was the thing that propped up and kept businesses afloat was the contract book at the time. The ability to have contractors out and have that recurring revenue when everything else dropped off a cliff was really, really, really important. We'll certainly see it more. I've actually seen two things. So I was having a chat with the team earlier just around this exact point, just to get their sentiment on it. And there is either the agencies that are really growing their contract book, or the agencies who were historically more contract who are leveling out from a perm contract space. And people were trying to find a 50-50 rather than lean into 80-20, for example, one way or the other. So yeah, we're seeing people with a drop-off in contract if it was always their niche because they're trying to build out the perm desk, and then vice versa. We're seeing everyone chase. Right, we're at 15% contract. It doesn't give us a lot of security if things kind of go wrong in the market from a perm perspective. How do we leverage that a little bit more?
Totally. I mean, you can see the spike on the right-hand side here for small agencies, right? Those in that 10 to 50 range. I think especially when Q3 came around and we heard the announcements around things like increasing NI costs coming in, as we all know, in about a week's time or so, which sucks. Yeah. There was this big expectation that we'd see a big push in towards looking at contract recruitment as being more of a more cost-effective method, should we say. A lot of companies did start going that way. But probably also there's a piece here around competition. Carl, I'll ask you about this one. more and more companies starting to look at doing contract, that means there's going to be less for each one to take, but arguably more to go around, right?
Well, I think so. With this, and I think also you both can sort of educate me a little bit more. I'm a perm employee at Ringover, but what we've identified is with the contract, those teams need to be a lot more proactive, and as you say, there's more of it going around, and it's on a more regular basis. So the recruiters need to be and have their fingers on the pulse a lot more, leveraging from the tech that they have, keeping their CRMs and their data up to base, and then being able to reach out and get in contact with those consultants a lot quicker, I guess, than the competition.
It's because it's that much more competitive side. Like, you need to be in touch with candidates more, like whether it's contacts or whether it's your candidates, to be fair, being in touch more often and staying updated and showing that you're there in case anything does change, I think is so important because the market is changing quite a lot at the moment. If we take a look at how that bleeds through into placements as well, like, no surprise, because we have seen more of those contract roles being sourced, especially in that Q2, as I mentioned, for the smaller agencies. No surprise that all the contract is on top. And also you'd expect to see a larger number of placements coming through in that side anyway. But the key one, again, looking in towards like Q3 at that micro size, again, Nick, that was a real busy quarter for contract.
Yeah, absolutely. So something pop up in the screen there. No.
It was producer Callum just stepping in to say hello and then disappearing again.
Really threw me off. Absolutely. It really, really, really has. I think on that front as well, what people are trying to do, obviously, is do more with what they have as opposed to throw headcount at it, right? I think we're just at that point, and this is probably what's given the confidence a little bit more, is every organisation is really fatigued with the last couple of years, but everyone is also really fatigued with the cost they may have been carrying when they're a much smaller organisation. We see that everyone is right sizing as well, and that's why they're driving more into the contract space to try and really really bolster and push that up. But then equally, people are the constant thread of conversation is we want to build this contract book, but we need to prescribe the right tasks to the right people and need to know that we're being more efficient and effective with our time because we can no longer do that. And we need the data to tell us who to speak to, who to speak to, what we're doing, is it right? And people just fundamentally are looking at really reducing their tech stack. In that respect, to try and put more resource into growing the contract book with the resource that they have instead of hiring really expensive contract recruiters on top of one another.
Love it. And Carl, maybe you got some insight into this as well. What are you seeing amongst your client base, those that are being successful? What are the trends that you guys are noticing in your own data set? Are you seeing them spending more time speaking to the right people? Are they spending more time on the phone in general? Like, what is it that success looks like to you guys?
So it's definitely that. It's definitely more time on the phone, and I think it's also the relationship side of things. A couple of years ago there was more roles than there were candidates, where now it seems to be much the other way around. And I think recruiters start to step out when they can touch base to a candidate and have more of a personal touch. And I think that feeds to what Nick was saying is when the data is correct, when you're up to date with what was said and how it was said, the previous conversation, the candidates are going to feel more receptive to those conversations and to potentially then moving forward. So, consultants being on the phone, having the chat, ensuring that they are up to date with where those candidates are, and then being able to sort of almost pinpoint when the best time to approach moving forward.
Spot on. I've jumped onto revenue here as well, so for those watching, they can cast their eyes over this as we sit here as well. Naturally, as we saw on the previous slides as well, you'll have jobs sitting up at one point, maybe in Q3 being pretty spiky. Not seeing that revenue always roll through until, say, Q4 when things actually get moving here. The key one that I'm looking at, though, is, again, contract is just that constant dominator, right, where we're seeing more companies moving in that direction. Even though at the lower end of things in the micro agencies, perm still came out on top in terms of the number of jobs they're getting. If nothing else, it's pointing again to that future of revenue for a lot of companies being in the contract direction because of the security that recurring revenue brings, Nick.
Totally. I think there's also from conversation that we're having, we're seeing people they'll move quicker, right? And whilst like a contract, a 3, 6, 9, 12-month contract is going to follow a fairly perm process, they're still making decisions quicker, right? So there is a real fear to absolutely go all in on a permanent hire, and there has been, right? And that's why, again,
Totally.
people have pivoted into the contract space because people know that it's for a time and it might be extended, but it's for a time, and there's a budget for that time to fill some resource gap, and that's why we're seeing people push into contract because it's still not easier. It takes a totally different skill set, but it can move faster. you can start to see the sort of reap the rewards faster than you would in a perm desk.
It's a big conversation I've had a few times lately around what does a good contract recruiter look like? Because the constant theme that we've heard about is people are like, cool, we want to do contract. Let's grab one of our perm billers and make them into a contract recruiter. But it is such a different ball game. Like the numbers that you're thinking about, the relationship focus of it. Arguably, it's more intense to some degree. Whereas perm is obviously quite transactional and fast. Contract is often about relationships. On your side, Carl, like, again, on this side, what are you seeing here? Are you seeing any pitfalls in the success of contract recruiters versus perm recruiters, like what people should be looking for if they want to find a good contract recruiter?
That's quite a good question.
It's quite an expansive one as well, I'm very aware. I've thrown you a curveball there.
I mean,
answer that hard question that every recruiter is trying to answer.
Talk to them, chat to them on the phone. Yeah, I mean, I think that is very open-ended. I think, again, like with what Nick said, what you said, the contract side of it is going to be a turnover base, and it is going to move more and slide more. Your perm, I guess that's where you want that stability. How do my clients, it comes down to it. It comes down to the nurturing side of it. We say being in communication and being in touch, staying up to date. It's not just going to be a phone call. It's also, staying top of mind, market trends, adjustments, roles that are going to become available, and also forward planning for it. So getting these contracts about, but having the time to structure and plan forward, because if someone is currently in a contract, we're not going to be able to place you. And it's kind of getting that line fitting. And again, it just comes back to the data, and it comes back to organizations sitting well positioned with their data, knowing I have a lot of contractors that I can reach out that are going to fall within this timeline, and these that won't, but I can still pitch out to these, and we can start to position them for potentially the next role that'll take in the next cycle.
Exactly, that big focus on the relationship side, right? And that's what you guys help with. That's the whole point around the calling piece and the conversations, which is all well and good. Lovely stuff. I mean, again, some of what we've taken away from this and the things that we took down when we sat down and looked at this data ourselves is, again, contract is volatile, as you guys have said. It slides back and forth, but really good opportunities for every size of business in there. Perm, I think, has been on that slight decline because of things like the NI changes coming in, the uncertainty. Business is still a little bit hesitant to go all in on perm at that point. The agency size being the piece, again, at the small level, we're seeing still a big focus on perm jobs. Every other is looking towards contract. Those are almost the natural stages of growth you go through. And it's one thing I really want to stress, because it's one thing that I know as a software founder that I've seen over the years is you hear advice from companies that have thousands of employees, for example, and say, yeah, you need to be doing it this way. But the consideration, Nick, has to be there about the size of business you are and what you can accomplish at the stage you're at and the foundations you need to get in place before you can think about stepping on forwards, right?
Yeah, totally. So that was one of the things that I'd noticed and I'd kind of noted down as a point for today, was that the gap between contract and perm metrics widens as the agency gets larger.
Yeah.
Which is really, really interesting, to be honest. But then you've got this challenge where you've got the kind of micro agencies who are really trying to go at it. And because the kind of boutique agency and the kind of small relationship driven agency feels like the way the market's going to go, there's going to be lots and lots of little agencies as opposed to lots and lots of massive agencies. It'd be interesting to see whether that then starts taking that market share away for small, and increases capacity through, we don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but automation and AI capability, where, just like, so I'll give an example. Our Fast Track 360 product, standard full-time employee right now could probably process up to maybe 200, 250 pays per week in a temporary or contract environment. With the inclusion of Fast Track 360 and its automation and AI capability, that increases to 2,000. So your sort of micro agency or your smaller agency now has the capability to really, really widen the scope by what would be viewed as an additional spend actually drives enormous ROI on the back of that, from in terms of what used to be throw bodies on bodies, which is no longer required.
And no longer the most successful path forward, right? And you stepped into territory there. I was going to come into this whole strategy to success and what businesses should be thinking about. Some of the questions that we saw pop into the chat earlier on through the slide that we had up there is, what should people be doing right now? What was it like in 2024? What are people starting to think about in 2025? And what is it that really matters? And to come back to you again, Nick, I'm really putting strain on your voice here, so I'll apologise to you as well. What are the main conversations you're seeing agencies come to you and ask about these days? Obviously, tech is one piece to it, but what is it they're asking you about? What is it they're keen to find out?
So you want to take it away from the tech?
It can be away from tech. It can be about anything.
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
What's the most like the hot topics that you're hearing about?
one of the biggest things, right, and I don't think anyone's going to be surprised, it reminds me actually of the kind of 2018 kind of time where video was, well, obviously from the background I've come from, that's what we were trying to push, right? And what we were trying to do was sort of sell people something that wasn't widely used in the capacity that it was done. And then everyone then started to go, I need video, but that's just a big wide term. That's like saying I need food. I say, okay, is it breakfast? Is it lunch? Is it dinner? Right now, breakfast. Say, well, do you want pancakes or do you want something else? And I'm seeing a real likeness like that now, where just everyone says AI, right? And now it's moving into agentic, right? And everyone says, I need an agent. And you go, well, you don't really know what you need it to do, right? So for me,
Yeah. What do you mean when you say
what do you
that
actually
word,
mean? Like,
right?
what does that mean? What does that mean? And is there actually any benefit? Because firm believer that right now people are absolutely not even remotely close to see the benefit of AI capability anywhere right now. We are 3 years, 5 years away, I think, before we really have it deeply embedded, ingrained in the day-to-day, and it becomes that piece that genuinely gives benefit. What I've been shouting a lot about my showcase presentation at the expo and just everything that I'm really talking about with everyone right now is you've got a strategy for everything. You have your readiness for everything, but no one yet, as far as I can see, is actually looking at the maturity of their organisation and their readiness for AI capability and that strategy.
Mm.
Really, what I've encouraged people to do is either undertake a consultant or do it themselves if they have the ability, but actually put a strategy in place for your AI and automation. Because and then look at every single action that you undertake as a business. Really, really go granular on every action that a consultant takes, and look at how we can save a margin. Can it save me 5 seconds? Can it save me 12 seconds? Can it save me 30 seconds? Can it save me 10 minutes? That's, I think, what the gold is that no one right now is mining for. And until that strategy is played out, I don't think people are going to get the benefit from AI, because having a button in your CRM that says write me a job description isn't going to do it.
Totally. I was having a really good, it's kind of like spanning worlds here. I had a podcast episode this morning with David Morale, who's the CEO and founder of Tiger Recruitment. Been going for like 24 years,
Yep.
50 plus staff, 4 offices around the world. And we had a really good chat about AI because, again, everyone's talking about it these days. And he's kind of going down the same vein where he said, you know, it'll be a few years till you really see the maturity come in. He's like, and the biggest mistake that he's hearing some like companies are making at the moment is buying 10 different AI products because they don't want to miss the boat, adding, you know, hundreds of pounds to their per head cost and as a cost base, and wondering where all the profits all of a sudden gone, and finding that actually the efficacy of a lot of those products is not yet being realized because they're still maturing and still coming towards that point. And his big stressor was, you know, look at it and say, what are the 2 areas that are like our biggest pain points right now? And can we find a solution that helps us tackle those? And keep it to 2. Don't go aggressive. Otherwise, you'll find yourself absolutely overwhelmed by all these solutions that don't talk to each other. And the closer it can be to your existing tech stack, and even more importantly, the closer it can be to revenue, the more valuable those tools are going to be, right? There might be something that can help you automate something behind the scenes, sure. But will it help you generate revenue today at a time when everyone's focus is on efficiency and trying to grow the business quicker? That's where you've really got to be putting your time and focus.
Absolutely. And I actually think AI is for the middle office and the back office. I think that's where we're going to see the greatest benefit from it. That is the non-revenue generating part of your organisation. That is the team that's enormous, that does all the stuff that a lot of that could be stripped out and taken out.
Yeah, it's like a cost basis more than anything else. Absolutely. As well. What about your side, Kyle, as well? Where are you seeing AI kind of come into the conversation and the picture at the moment?
I love this, and I do enjoy that it was brought up as a rabbit hole, because AI, I think, is a buzzword that's across everyone's mouths. And I think also the expectation from the general public is vastly unrealistic to what AI is. And it's been touched on here. I mean, AI is there to eliminate those mundane or manual tasks. So how can we take away these tasks from the consultants? And that's what we want to look at. AI is definitely a big uptake in our space, and it's not necessarily right here to change the world. You know, we're not here to change the face of anything, but we are here to try and make things easier. Firms reach out to us, consultancies reach out to us, and their focal point is, how do I make my consultant's life as easy as possible? And how can they do their job with the less amount of interference or headaches? And when we look at AI coming out of, you know, Ringover's point of view, yeah, we're having a conversation, phenomenal. We look back then at the consultants, and you look back at the databases, and you say, right, well, all these consultants putting the correct data back in. Yeah, cool. My call logs in as an activity and it's there. Have they captured some notes? Are they updating the relevant fields and the information of the candidates inside the CRMs? And this is what's being put in front of us. So our AI tool is there to more support in terms of a note taker. Now, again, we're not here to revolutionize or change the world, but it's going to capture notes, and it's going to capture notes how each agency wants them to, because it's AI, and we can prompt it to do so accordingly. That being the summary basis of AI, and then we'll have the more training or learning and development aspect of it, where a lot of agencies are also starting to put back into their consultants, which is vitally important. But now, how do we do that? The old days was, I'm going to listen to a call recording and we're going to go over it step by step. It's a 45-minute long conversation. That's a lot of time spent around it. So with the AI, great, let's start flagging. Let's start pulling up key points of a conversation. Let's start understanding a trend around a specific persona that we've been having this conversation with. What's being said, and at what stage in a conversation is it being said? How can we better structure our talk flow based on what we can see in the data, and then we can sort of structure the consultant's time spent in these calls, rather spend time with candidates that are interested, as opposed to having long in-depth conversations with those that we get to the correct question at a stage it's just too late. So I think it's bringing in AI. I'm a big fan of it, but also understanding what it can do and where it can work, and of course within your tech stack, how's it going to look for the consultants and for the businesses.
A big focus there, it sounds like, is one, making consultants more efficient in the day-to-day actual operation of the job, but also their managers, when being able to assist and coach their teams, is a big piece of it, which really starts bleeding in towards things like data. And what I'll do here, actually, I'll come across onto our Q&A as well, because there are some things that have come through on this one, and we'll start tackling some of those. There's a few other topics that we took out earlier that we'll come on to in a moment. In fact, we'll start there. Nick, what should consultants be doing this year? Because there's always been this focus last year about, right, get efficient, get profitable, cut down the numbers, and like you say, having to just check a load of people in the business and hope that it works out well for you. What should be the focus this year in your eyes?
Being in front of people. Genuinely, strip it right down. Like, honestly, we can spend, to David's point on your podcast, we can spend another 500 quid per seat just to get someone in the door to give them shiny tech, but get out in the world as much as you possibly can. Set yourself a target of 3 face-to-face, 5 face-to-face meetings a week. Get out there and meet as many people as you can. That is the way it was always done. That is the way you will win as the market starts to come back. And then consider how AI can help make that more efficient, so that the people that you're spending time with are actually people that want to spend time with you, and are actually going to, there's a mutual benefit to that. So I would start there and work back.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, let's start tackling some of these questions then, shall we, as well? Benchmark and repeat business. That's the kind of stuff I'll point towards. It feels like a real pop-up answer. That's the kind of thing we'll probably start touching on in the state of recruitment report we're looking at putting out over the next few weeks. So internally, what you've seen today is a preview of a lot of the data we've got coming in our future report. So keep your eyes open over the next 2 or 3 weeks. We'll have a report coming out, and you'll see more benchmarks in there around different areas of the business that you'll probably find are really valuable on this. On that second one, Nick, are there any consistent metrics regardless of size or ICP? Are you seeing anything yourself? I guess this really comes down to looking at the numbers in a much deeper level. The one thing that I've seen when we looked at our previous report that really started to dig things out was things like interviews. And I always speak about interviews being the golden metric in recruitment. We see it all the time. It's the most targeted metric across our 350 customers that we've got, because it represents a recognition by the client that you have sourced them a good candidate and put them forward for a given job. And yeah, that is perm focused, but that's always the number one that I speak to people about, and the one that I'm always hearing the most about as well. What are you seeing perhaps on the Vincere side when people are asking you for numbers that they can use to run their businesses with?
Yeah, so it's certainly interviews, but it's actually they want to break that down even further. So they actually want specific to the person metrics that they can coach them to. So versus, so not just KPI, for use of the term that no one likes, right? But not just KPI, but actually broke it down to the person. Because I actually had this whole conversation yesterday with someone who just signed up with Vincere. And the whole point was, one of the biggest things for them was that using Vincere Intelligence, what they had the ability to do was actually understand and break the data down even further. So, it was the ability to say to the person, this is your goals. Well, how does that break out? How far away are you from your targets? And that's obviously your world, Denny. Do you know what I mean? So, like that is actually allowing a leader to lead, to coach, and coach the person to the metrics that they need to be working to. Because the broad statement that used to be, we need more CVs out, we need more cold calls, it just might not be relevant for 30% of your team. And actually, you're going to miss the number because we don't have the right data to tell them, actually, we should be managing this person to that metric.
Yeah, and it's one big thing we stress a lot is you can't look at a metric in isolation and assess if it's like a good or a bad thing. Maybe revenue you can, which would be fab, but bad revenue won't last around for an awful long time, and sometimes it can be very, very spiky. So be careful of that. But again, probably in the report we're putting out in the next couple of weeks, we'll have lots of data around these various metrics throughout an agency. So grab that report when it comes out, and you'll be able to see what looks consistent across this as well.
Nice.
One thing I do want to come to here, because that third question is a really interesting one. The best way to approach BD in today's market, ever-present question. There's been lots of chat around BD over the last 2 years because it has been a hard market to get business going. Carl, I'll come to you here first, if you don't mind, because again, you guys are at the very, very front of the journey of someone trying to build new business. You're the VoIP provider for them, right?
Yeah.
What are you seeing be the most successful when it comes to getting new business in for an agency?
There's some agencies being very strategic about this, and yes, you can do more cold calls, you can do more outreach, but if it isn't a strategized approach, you can kind of just be throwing rocks into the ocean, and using warm leads, using your sort of automation or your cadence-like tools, where you're doing a connection request coming through on LinkedIn, reaching out, dropping a message on there, following it up with a supporting email, being able to automate all of this. So again, the consultant isn't having to do all these manual tasks. And by the time it gets to that almost cold call, it's not that. It's not a cold call. It's a warm outreach. You've created a bit of a relationship with the relevant BDs, and you can then open those discussions. And I think it leads to more. So we're seeing a lot more of that sort of automated outreach being utilized and adapted by the consultants. And then by the time they're getting to their calling metrics, let's say, and the numbers that they need to start achieving, they're actually having longer and more engaged conversations. And from that, I guess, also pushes back to the data, which we always touch on. You can be coached to be better in a conversation. You can be better at what you do when you have that relevant data and you have that insight. And I guess rather getting deeper into a conversation than just a cold call being shut off in the first couple of minutes, all comes to about how you lead up to that initial conversation, that initial chat that we have with the candidates.
Mm-hmm. To play devil's advocate a little bit here, because I'm sure everyone feels the same about this at the moment, is inboxes, whether it's comment sections on LinkedIn, it's your inbox, it's your email inbox, it can even be text. Everyone's getting absolutely spammed by every single angle. So being able to be multi-approach is really good. But how do you cut through to when someone does see for the first time they're recognizing you, if what they're doing is ignoring pretty much every LinkedIn DM they get, their emails are going straight into delete because they can't be asked to read the 20th random cold AI generated email of the day? How do you think you make a difference?
Is that still with me?
Yeah, why not?
All right, perfect. I mean, it's a good question, and I think it's one that's going to continue to have its ups and downs. Your emails will start to generate success, and through the next stage, they're going to be the cold part of it. A personalized approach is always going to be far better than your AI. I think that's a common post and feedback we see is you start to feel an AI post, you start to feel a sort of generated marketing like approach that's come about it. Yes. WhatsApp is a new line of communication that a lot of sort of agencies are starting to utilize. But then you look at the limitations that come with that, because with WhatsApp for Business, you have to initiate these conversations with a template. So it's not really warming introduction from that point too. It'll come down to, I guess, the phone calls. Getting someone on a phone call, and it's going to be what's your opener, how's your approach, how can you switch it on in those initial seconds and win over that immediate conversation. And from there, I guess having your name come across from an email or from a LinkedIn post is going to do you benefit, but it's just changing the word, changing the manner in which you are sort of structuring those, I think would be a far better approach.
I've got some,
what about on your side, Nick? I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this too.
I do. Yeah, I've got some thoughts on this. So I actually think, well, finally, over the last couple of years, the recruitment and staffing sector have started to value marketing more than they were previously kind of viewed for a long time, and the role that they play, and actually just how it is sales. It's the same department. Do you know what I mean? So, and what I think we're going to start seeing, or what I highly encourage, is that people start to look at the SaaS model and then start to apply that, because it's a tried and tested and it works, right? And they all buy our tech, so evidently we're having the conversations with them. And that, I think, having a go-to-market play. So actually building a marketing team out that's more than just one person, because that's like saying sales should just be one person. Again, it can't be just one person. And actually, I think if agencies start to really invest into content creation, go-to-market strategy, the value that's delivered, and if people stop talking about themselves and start thinking more like they're how people buy and start thinking about their customer. In fact, there's a great book that was recommended to me a few years ago that I would highly recommend to anyone that's involved in selling anything would read it, and it's called Sell the Way You Buy. And it's a really interesting, really, really good book, and really reframes a lot. And then when you pair that with another book, sorry, you can start giving recommendations. When you pair that with another book, which is called The Outcome Generation, you can start to then really put it together to go, we're now we're in an outcome generation, right? And that's what everyone's looking for, the outcome before they invest in the thing. And then when you start to think about how people are buying, but then also the outcome is what they want already, then we really need to start considering that we'll have warmer and better conversations with people at the right time when we actually market to them and give them value and give them the outcome and lead them to the outcome before we ever have that conversation.
Totally, yeah, agree with all you said there as well. That kind of links actually quite nicely into this next piece as well, around saying, you know, tech stack aside, ignore the tech. What numbers and tactics are making the difference? You've mentioned marketing there. There's a bit I'd love to expand on a bit here, actually, where Nigel, again, this morning on our podcast, was speaking about their big focus is making sure they're the top search result on all the key terms that they care about. And he was saying a lot of agencies don't really tend to care about search. And we had a conversation then about AI and how that's changing how search is going to work. Is it worth investing in? He definitely believed it was. But the other thing that's been a real hot topic in a lot of conversations on LinkedIn in the SaaS world lately has been founder-led brands, and saying that in the future, because everything is so AI, because it's going to be so, you're not going to be able to keep up with the volume that's being put out there, but the quality is what you'll be able to do a little bit differently. And building a brand around a person, hopefully real people. We're not going to see AI avatars out there that have got brands and communities around. That'd be a little bit too weird for me. I'm very sure we will, but I really hope not too much of it. But the biggest thing, honestly, and you can look at Salt Recruitment as a great example of this. You know, 200 plus staff, very successful business. Elliot Dell, he's on LinkedIn every single day, posting things about his journey, really insightful stuff that you can take away from it. Yep. And he said, when I sat down for a coffee with him a few weeks ago, his big thing was like, you know, brand is a big part of what we're focusing on. And a lot of that comes back to him as the CEO, not so much being the, like a founder-led business where everything is about going through him and he passes it off to the team of 200 plus all around the world. Absolutely not. There are other strategies at play. But the big thing I'd really encourage a lot of people to be thinking about here, and yes, it does require effort on everyone's side, is to try and make sure that you have someone that can be that figurehead brand for your business that really makes you stand out, that you have an opinion and a standing in the world, and you're not just another Me Too recruitment agency, right? I think it's really hard for junior recruiters, especially, to be able to get to the stage where they can build this brand. It's all well and good saying to them, oh, you know, go and post on LinkedIn and draw clients in. Unless you're like top 1% at posting on LinkedIn, you're going to really struggle to build that brand. But who do people want to hear from? Who do clients want to hear from? You as the CEO, you as the managing director. So although it can be painful, if you need to get help and get a coach to do it, I'd say to go ahead and do that. But I really try and have a think about founder-led brands, because I think that's where the world is going. And again, because that authentic nature exists in a world that will be dominated by AI, that will be your differentiator compared to many competitors that are out there.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And it's a behaviour that people have to build because it doesn't come naturally. And I say this to every single salesperson that ever joins our sales organisation, is lean into it and make it a habit. I still generate an enormous amount of pipeline for our sales teams, every single one, just because it's become a habit over the last 8 years. I've built that brand. I've built that respect, I guess, and where people will come and ask me questions. You know, people that I don't know. I got a message yesterday from someone who wants to. This is a good example about how a person and a personal brand can then really open doors for the wider team, and that is. We did a session. This was the message. Look, basically, we've run a session internally. We'll be talking about how we can basically get better at using AI, but also building personal brand. And a few of the consultants mentioned your name. And would you be open to coming into our office and talking to us on one of our L&D days? And there we go. That's, you know, very subtle opportunity to go in and speak to someone who may become a customer, may be a customer. Like, it doesn't matter. It's subtle and it's value led and it's outcome generation stuff.
It's already inspired me to think about having to run a webinar now where I get people like Elliot Dell on to come and talk about that brand building, because it is such a key thing. Yeah. And the important thing to remember, and I'm sure you see that, well, you won't really see it because it's kind of the whole point, is even though people won't necessarily come through you, sometimes it can be the authority that you build for your brand. Totally. That means people will go through a website and speak to a recruiter. You might never ever actually hear from this person, but the reason they're engaging with you in the first place is because they've seen you and what you stand for and the sort of things you're putting out there. And that builds trust and belief that you've got a good team underneath you that can do a great job.
Totally.
And it could be as simple as that sometimes. I'm very aware that we're coming up towards time, though. We spoke through the last two questions on here as well, the one key metric. For me, that would always be into the range that we spoke about earlier. And can you send the data to us? Yes. Callum, I believe, is going to drop a link to the One Up Labs subscription inside of the chat so you guys can see what's going on there. Last thing before we round things up, though, guys, we've got our own little splash screen here as well. But any kind of things that you want to shout out as your main takeaways from this, or any plugs that you want to give? Nick, we'll start with you.
Yes, I think that people we know people are starting to want to interpret and understand data, right? We know that everyone wants to be able to turn it into digestible outcomes that they can use for the right next action and next step. And what we're also seeing is that at the greatest sized, those organisations at the top are now really starting to look at stripping out their tech and simplifying it. And if you are one of those agencies and you want to genuinely get, it's easy for me to say this, and whether you believe me is another thing or not, but if anyone genuinely wants to understand the maturity and readiness of their organisation for AI, we booked 9 readiness assessments where we'll basically spend some time with your team and give you an assessment on the maturity, and that's something we're offering right now for free. So message me, get in touch, and we'll basically book you and your team in, and we'll run through a series of workshops and sessions, and we'll come back out the back of it recommendations as, are you ready? What do you need to do? What's our recommendations on where you are, and are there any individuals in the organisation that we think are totally ready or not ready, and there's work to be done.
Fantastic. A lot of value being offered there as well, which I absolutely love. Good stuff. Kyle, what about yourself?
Yeah, so from my side, I think what I've also identified, and I think it's something for all businesses to keep in mind, is also adapting to change. We'll always go on about tech stack. I fall into that tech stack space, but it's quite incredible to think that from the agencies I'm dealing with, the larger agencies are adapting change much better than I think the smaller ones. The smaller ones have had a tried and tested process that has worked and gotten them to where they are, and they're kind of sticking with that. Where the larger ones are saying, well, let's shake it up, let's move it around, let's see what is going to start generating a bit better in that. Also inside these sort of organizations and within these teams is becoming more collaborative. I touched on learning and development early on, and I think it's also giving back to the team more. Sitting with a consultant and upskilling them, turning around and saying, well, this is where we see some weaknesses here, we see some positives. Let's rather put this in effect and move forward with that, because people will generate success from that, from positive sort of upskilling and training. And the minute there's success, means there's more money, there's more revenue being generated, and people are a lot happier when their bank account is fuller. So it's working as a collective. It's being open enough to adapt, to change to what the market is asking for. And from our point of view, from a tech basis, yes, utilizing a system that works with OneUp and gives you the data that you can see that my top consultants are doing X versus what my less successful consultants are doing. Also, my top consultants are saying, and the way they're saying it is in this manner. So let's see how we can implement that into your current talk track and just alter it, not change it. No one wants to be talking or being spoken to from a script, but just being able to change your natural flow so that it's going to align better with where the success is being generated.
Fab stuff. Brilliant. Well, with that, guys, we'll start to round things out. As mentioned earlier on as well, Callum has dropped a link inside the chat if you want to sign up to get that labs report that's coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We'll have loads of data in there, way more insights than you've seen today as well. It's always good when we get one of these out into the hands of people like yourself. Well, gents, that's about it. Thank you both very much for your time. It's been a really good conversation, and look forward to doing the next one. But for now, have a wonderful day, and catch you all later.
See you later.
Thank you very much, all.